What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. So today I am gonna have a guest back for the second time. It's we're gonna be talking about, you guessed it, my favorite topic, Bitcoin. Brandon, like I said, this will be his second episode. Spent close to 2 decades in inside traditional finance, most of it in distressed assets and restructuring. We talked a lot about it on the last interview, which I'll put a link to. And he sat across the table from companies that were, essentially running out of runway. Some like a theme that obviously a lot of startup founders wrestle with. So that work gave him a rare kind of like unsentimental view of how businesses actually live and die. He carries a certified insolvency and restructuring advisor credential, which he earned in 2017, which is not a background you find at most Bitcoin conferences. And so, yeah, I'm excited to dig deeper into this whole topic of, well, I guess Bitcoin, but also sovereign a little bit more. And how are things going, Brendan?
Great, Sonny. Thanks for having me on. I do have to give a disclaimer, though, that I technically didn't renew my certification when I left my former job. So I guess it technically ended in 2025. So um,
Noted.
yeah,
Noted. Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess do you reminisce about these days at all though? Are you like, oh, I wish I could just put on that, I don't know, suit and tie and drive to work for an hour and a half or whatever it was?
I certainly missed the paycheck, going from a nice steady corporate paycheck with stock options and uh the Cadillac of health insurance to running a startup and doing everything on your own. There's some serious trade-offs. I love the autonomy and the freedom I have now, but there's no denying the fact that the financial part of it so far has certainly been an opportunity cost to get the business going as opposed to an opportunity benefit. So
How do you think through that as an entrepreneur, right? Like how do you, like, you're kickstarting this new business? You're obviously very confident about the macro, right? I mean, I would say the macro looks better than it ever has. So you've got confidence on your side, you've got a business model, but like, how do you navigate now? Like, what kind of things are you thinking about, and kind of optimizing for? And yeah, like, how does that show up in your day to day?
well, I'll say first and foremost, the only reason I even have this opportunity is because of Bitcoin, is because I decided to make serious allocations to Bitcoin, that I used Bitcoin as my savings, as my money. I didn't invest in the stock market. I didn't buy commercial real estate. I took my savings and I put it into Bitcoin and I waited a long time. And it has provided me and my family with the comfort to be able to go out and try something like this because I was able to save my money in something better, which, as you were talking about at the beginning, is really something I'm trying to communicate to businesses and taking a long-term look at this. And hey, 7, 8, 10 years from now, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to undertake things that you never thought were possible. Just trying to repay interest on your line or make distributions or keep salaried people happy. You're going to have flexibility with your capital as a business owner to possibly expand, to possibly retain your better employees, to reward people the way you want to instead of the way you're forced to by the financial realities of your company. I mean, how many stories of business owners do we have of losing good people because they just weren't able to pay them what they wanted to, just because they couldn't keep the business going and do that? And so really focusing in on trying to get in front of business owners, high net worth individuals, and explaining the value proposition of, if you're willing to have a long term outlook and a low time preference, that 8, 10, 12 years from now, you're going to have so many more options in front of you that you could have never imagined.
It's funny because even yesterday, yesterday I had a guy on my show that was an Uno coin user back in 2017. and he told me as well that it was because of his purchases of Bitcoin early on, and believing when I guess there was blood in the streets and everybody else was running for the exit. He held, right, and that conviction has now enabled him to build his dream business, right? So, and that's the other thing. I know Bitcoin obviously is all about like holding and hodling forever, but if you believe that you can, beat the Bitcoin price, right? Because that's hopefully what you're trying to do with any kind of business you
Mhm.
build. There is an opportunity to fund your dream businesses, like with the Bitcoin that you hold. So yeah, I know for myself as well, many times, right? Like rough patches where, I don't know, you lose a job or a business isn't going your way, right? Like I've had crazy, wild things where the central bank came after us,
Yeah.
and you can't prepare for those things, but you've got to, and you've got to be like, what is it? Not the hedgehog, oh my God. What's the animal? The
The
that
honey
represent
badger.
the honey badger. That's the one I was thinking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, you got to be like a honey badger and just not give a shit.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're living through that right now, where there's a lot of negative sentiment, people are down, and it's hard to go through these times. And obviously, it helps if you've been through one or more of these cycles and know that this is just par for the course, and this is what happens. And again, this is a long-term value proposition. Um, but yeah, all sorts of bad things do happen along the way. And there's you mentioned that you're trying to beat the returns of Bitcoin, and that's true to an extent, but there are some people who genuinely are just comfortable. They said, I've made enough money, I've accumulated enough capital. I want to do something I want, even if I know it's going to underperform my other options because I'm comfortable with where I'm at. I, quote unquote, have enough. And now it's my turn to some people, there's tons of stories of Bitcoiners giving money away to charity or different philanthropic endeavors because they have enough and they're at a
Mm.
point in their life where they want to go do other things. And that may not be for everyone. And that's not, I'm not saying everyone has to do that. And if you don't turn into some philanthropic, benevolent person, that you're going to that's wrong or anything like that. But it is an option out there for a portion of people that may want to do that as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So Ryan, the last time, actually, before we even get into these, I was gonna say, so right before we hit go on this interview, we were talking about like customer service and how you're seeing this like return to people preferring humans over talking to, I guess. I mean, I don't know if anyone ever preferred talking to AI, but there's definitely like, like a pushback towards it. And I know me as well. Like, even, it doesn't matter how smart that AI is and how good it sounds. If it's not a human, I just get frustrated because I'm already frustrated, right? When I'm calling customer support, now I'm like double frustrated, and so it does seem like something that would last the test of AI. But I don't know. You tell me. But AI, people are saying customer support's the first thing that will most likely go, right? Or that was the word on the street. You could say the last couple of years or whatever, but things are changing, right?
Well, I think you bring up something there where customer support, maybe the first line of defense can be AI, but I would say 99 times out of 100, the reason someone is calling the company is you're already dealing with an edge case, right? It's something that you've been unable to resolve on your own through the normal channels. And it's like now you are trying to ask a machine to handle the problem that clearly sits outside the norm of what goes on here, and then you get into this sort of butting of heads of a system already not capable of handling your edge case, and then you trying to figure out, how do I get out of this system ASAP to talk to a human being who can handle the edge case. And I so I'm sure there's going to be some integration of AI, and honestly, I think people would even be more receptive of it if it was like, hey, I know that I'm going to take like 3 spins of the wheel with the AI. We're going to see if it can solve my problem. And then if not, it's like, hey, has your problem been solved? Hit zero, talk to a person. Like, I think people would be more receptive where previously, I think people have just been so frustrated because they just end up in the push a button rabbit hole where you're on your, I've had situations where I've looked at my phone and there's like 16 buttons across there and I haven't gotten anywhere. I'm still trying to navigate what's going on. And I think that's what's frustrating to people. And as you said, I just anecdotally have noticed I had an issue with my car over the weekend. It was a total disaster, but I called the tow service associated with my insurance, talked to a person, they talked to another person, got me taken care of right away. The place servicing my car actually had it towed to one place. I talked to a person there, and then I found out the issue with my car was actually covered under recall, so I needed to take it to a dealership. And every step of the way, I was talking to a human being. I noticed it recently. I booked some flights on Southwest. I had a child that I was bringing, and that was causing a problem in the system. So a lap child. So I called Southwest, got someone right on the phone, talked to them, and I've had a couple other instances where I'm just seeing more and more this attention to detail. People, as the AI tools get better, as our technology gets better, there's still some piece of people wanting an individual to talk them through things, to walk them through things, to hold their hand, to help them out. And that is a big part of what we're trying to do at Sovereign is like, if you want to be a DIYer, listen, I was a DIYer. I figured this stuff all out on my own. It took me a really long time. It took me a lot of lost sats and some painful experiences along the way. But I did DIY it, but I'm that type of person. But not everyone's like me. And so most people are wanting to talk to someone, want someone to help them. And that's what we're proposing at Sovereign is that we'll help you do this. We'll help you get up to speed quickly. You won't have to go through all the headaches and heartaches and mistakes that I made. Even with AI, it's hard. I've had some troubleshooting things with like Bitcoin wallets and my node and other things like that along the way that it's just difficult even using AI to do it. And what did fix it? Me talking to someone else in my network that was like, "Oh, you need to do this. Here's a tool." And and that solved the problem. And I think there's just a longing for that. And then I think companies are realizing how important that is. That like customer retention, client satisfaction is everything. Now, if you're Crest or, Johnson and Johnson and you're just selling consumer products and you're putting millions of them on the shelf every year, probably not so much. But for service businesses, certainly, or businesses dealing with money or finance or things like that, there's value in being able to personally service your customers and make your clients happy. And like that is how your business survives into the future is repeat customers, happy customers, and the stickiness of those customers, knowing that they're going to be taken care of with you. And if they ever think of going somewhere else, there's going to be a potential that they don't get taken care of as well as you've taken care of them.
So yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I mean, even at Coin, it's like it's been a big part of our story as well. Like I said, I used to work at Kraken. I mean, I believe Kraken, the reason they're so successful is singularly because of that. They just took customer support super, super seriously. And so yeah, that's awesome. I guess last time when we spoke, we kind of traced the arc from, bank to Bitcoin, right? So since we recorded, like what's the one part of the story that you wish you had, kind of told better? Like was like the piece people still get kind of wrong about Sovereign?
Well, one part I mean, I didn't really get into. I just kind of I knew we had a certain amount of time, and I kind of wanted to just give the Cliff Notes version of my whole story. But there was a part of it where, I had been a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I had been praying for almost 2 years that I was really struggling with a lot of the stuff going on at my job, and the COVID stuff was really really difficult on me as someone who didn't buy into any of that stuff and wasn't doing any of the prescribed remedies. It was just hard. People like us were treated really poorly. We had separate rules. We were had to do different things. We were literally treated like, lepers, compared to other people around us. And I was just really struggling. At the same time, there was a turnover of leadership, someone that I really respected. And to this day, we go out to dinner a couple times a quarter. And he left, and the reins got turned over to some other people that didn't really that have the same trust in me and my team, and really micromanaged us, and really making getting stuff done. I say I had more authority at 30 than I did at 40, and it was just becoming very difficult to stay there. And I just kept praying, like, God, if you want me here, keep me here. If not, please let it let it be clear what you want me to do. And then the story of me leaving for Sovereign all just kind of, just unfolded. It was like, wait. God was like, wait. And then it was like, door open, door open, door open, door open. And it was like, walk through all of these. And so it was kind of, and listen, I don't even know how this is going to turn out. I don't think, like, I'm favored by God, and this company is 100% going to succeed or anything like that. It could be a total failure, and that could be the lesson in store for me potentially. That, hey, you haven't really had any spectacular failures in your life, and maybe it's time to have one for you here. I don't know. I have no idea what to expect. But that part of the story, it was much more than just sort of, hey, I want to go do something different. I have some Bitcoin and it's a good time to go do it. It was, I mean, I really took it seriously, and prayed about it every single day. And to me, it just, talking with God and everything, it just seemed very clear that he was like, okay, I hear you, and here's a path for you to go down, that you can go do next. So that was a really big part of my transition and story that, I don't like. I shouldn't say I don't like. I just don't get into all the time, because it's just an aside. It's just a personal thing for me. And um, maybe people share other experiences like that and can relate to it. But usually it's not kind of relevant to the topic at hand and things we're talking about. So I would say that's a big part of something I left off making the transition.
Interesting, super interesting. My favorite quote, I guess, yeah, probably my favorite quote is by Vinod Khosla. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
Sure. Yeah.
he's okay. You have success matters, failure is inconsequential. And so I would argue that failure is literally the name of the game in entrepreneurship. And the
Hmm.
more often you fail, better off you are in some ways, right? Because it's as long as you're not doing the same failure over and over again. But it is
Right.
data.
Learn from it.
My little ones, I got 3 of them. They teamed up with their best friends, which are also like these 2 sisters, and the 5 of them took their they dressed up my 2-year-old as like a lemon, and they opened up a lemonade stand at the corner baseball diamond, right? And they got about 40 minutes in. They made, I think, like $50 or something.
That's pretty good.
And yeah, right. And then there's an actual store at that corner, and he came to them. He came to kids, like 8-year-old girls, and like and like a 2-year-old went and said, "Look, you guys need to shut this down,
Oh
or
my
else,
gosh.
yeah, that you need permits and blah blah blah." And I guess it was eating into his profits, right?
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
and they came home, and they were like obviously miserable about the whole experience, right? But I was just like delighted. I'm like, you guys just tried, like that's awesome. That's so much better than most people, right? And they're like, we only made $10, and like people are so difficult. I'm like, welcome to the real world.
Yeah, good lessons.
Yeah.
And by the way, listen, like, you succeeded. That's why the guy came after you. Like he recognized you as a threat. You should be proud of what you did.
Yeah, yeah. So now I'm charting out like festivals and like I'm like, okay, how do we like, turn up the ante here, right? Because Toronto's full of these like beautiful little things, right? That are always going on the weekends and stuff. But they're not going to give up, hopefully. We'll keep trying. They've got a bunch of ideas. So anyway, so you spent what like close to 2 decades, right, inside distressed assets, like sitting with companies that were falling apart. What did those failures like teach you about money that a healthy balance sheet never could?
Yeah, what I really learned was almost all of the problems I was running into were because of poor management. And there were edge cases where we had a seafood distributor and like crazy economics happened in China and the whole business kind of moved to like Vietnam and Cambodia and that really disrupted his business. But those sort of macro gigantic events were few and far between the problems we were dealing with. It was always there was a problem going on in the business. Management didn't identify it quickly enough, and it eventually festered to the point where it put their company in a position where they were defaulting on covenants. For people that don't know, loan covenants are parameters you have to hit with regards to your financials for a lending institution to continue lending to you. And a lot of times we would see businesses break these covenants or run out of cash or end up in overdraft situations or things like that because and then when we got in and actually diagnosed the problem, it was like, oh, this issue or these issues have been going on for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years sometimes, like generational issues. And it's like no one ever addressed it. And they just were eating through their capital just consistently. And then they eventually got to a point where they ran out of capital. And I see Bitcoin kind of in the same way as Bitcoin's going to be a part of the financial landscape. It's only going to be more and more a part of it going into the future. And so you can kind of ignore it now. You can be a late adopter. You can do all these sorts of things, but that will come at the detriment to your business. And if you can get started now, even if there's one customer paying you in Bitcoin or no customers even paying you in Bitcoin. The fact that you're set up with Bitcoin, you know how to use it, you're ready to send Bitcoin, you're ready to receive Bitcoin. And then, most importantly, for businesses right now, I think the most important part is keeping a portion of your treasury in Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be half, it doesn't have to be 80%, but 5 to 10% or something like that in your treasury to just hold on your balance sheet into the long term as your savings. So, and instead of holding cash or paying down debt or the typical things businesses do, buying T-bills, getting into a money market account, trying to find a 2.5% deposit account at a bank, these sorts of things. If you can just keep some portion of that in Bitcoin and just do it today, understand like you may not see the rewards in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but 6, 7, 8, 10 years down the road, you're going to start to realize the benefits of it. You're going to be set up for it in the future as opposed to just ignoring, and then boom, one day you wake up and it's like, I need to know how to use these things. I'm unprepared for it, and then everyone's kind of scrambling at once. So I really see this as getting ahead of something and addressing it and being ready to step into sort of the next wave of payments and digital money and money um, that is not debased by central authorities and really allows you to hold on to your purchasing power. And I view that no differently than a company that has a negative margin line, let's say. I mean, the amount of companies I would go into, and it's like they have 500 products, and you would go through and go, how many of these products are actually making money? And you find out it's like, you know, 60% of them, 40% of these products shouldn't exist. Let's get rid of them because you're not making money on them. And that problem has just been festering for 10 years. But the other 60% that are making money are kind of papering over that 40%. And so I see no difference in recognizing a problem and where things are going and getting started today. As I see a lot of similarities between the two.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. So, looking back, how many of those companies do you think were killed by the asset side, and how many by the currency they were denominated in?
I, you know, I Man, that's a good question. I would say, well, the irony is, right, like it all kind of comes back to the currency. But I would say there's certainly was, especially on the ABL side, which is asset-based lending, when you're lending against receivables, inventory, that sort of thing. I would say that world much more so destroyed by the balance sheet, just poor inventory management, or like overbuying inventory, not being able to sell it through, and then not taking the losses. And then you do an audit of the inventory and you take the loss, and then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, this company's not actually making any money. They just hit all their losses in their inventory. um, or um, they knew they had like a dilution issue on their receivables, and they were still borrowing into that, even though they were like collecting less than they were borrowing. And so I would say more on the asset based side, it was the balance sheet issue. But any sort of private credit, VC, um, cash flow deals, enterprise value deals, we would call them, where you're underwriting to like the EBITDA, trading at some multiple, and that's the collateral of your business. That those failures were almost all by and large because of the currency. So um,
Interesting.
yeah.
So, like I was saying in the intro, right? So, certified insolvency and restructuring advisor. It's not like your average Bitcoin guy, right? Conference guy. So what in that training turned out to be like the sharpest lens for helping a business owner think about Bitcoin?
Yeah, just I think the thing we talked about earlier, which is an ongoing problem that goes undiagnosed, and not being able to, not management not acting on, not seeing the problem, or in some cases they saw the problem, they just chose to do nothing because the paycheck was nice, and which is a whole other problem as well. But yeah, the inability to make decisions, to take decisive action when there's a problem. Another thing I ran into a lot was, you would have a business owner acknowledge there's a problem. Yes, we need to do something. And then they would still fight you on kind of the implementation. It was, hey, maybe we need to move out of this second location. And it's like, well, then I have to sell the building, or I have to break and it's like, yeah, you should be doing all those things. It's a problem. And you're still not willing to do it. So a lack of decisiveness and willingness to act when there is a problem, when you see something and it's going to be an issue. And this could be good or bad. I mean, this could be, you see a new customer comes into your market, they're really interested in your product, and you kind of just treat them like Joe Schmo, they're just the next person, get in line, as opposed to like, hey, if we really took our attention and put it to this customer, we get twice as many sales out of them? Could we get three times as many sales out of them? Like, if we truly treated them as best we could, what would that look like? And so it can be a failure to um, do things that are accretive to the company. And then it can also be the opposite, where you see a problem, like, I know this is a problem employee, but I don't really want to deal with it. They're, costing us some production on this line of business, but I don't want to have the conversation or whatever. They're fine. We'll just try to bury them under, some other more productive people, and not addressing an issue, which is just a bigger just as big of a problem as well. So lack of decisiveness is it's killer for management teams and people running businesses.
So, Brandon, before the boardrooms and the podcast, who was like a younger Brandon? Like, what did you want out of your career, and how far is where you where you landed from where you started, I guess.
Oh man, I am so different that it's crazy. You wouldn't even recognize the person I am, 10 years ago. Listen, I was in the fiat system, man. I was, hey, you work hard, you play hard, you live for the weekends, you put your money into a 401k, and then you retire at 67 and you go off into the sunset. Um, I was a very live in the now moment type of person. And there's places for that, and I still do that now. And there are good things about enjoying the moment and your time in the present. But my time preference was so much higher, um, I really didn't even kind of think about the future. It was just like I'm doomed. I don't want to say doomed, but I'm gonna be in this job for 45 years, and that'll be that. And it was kind of like that's the way life works. I got my college degree, I got into a job, and I'm just going to keep putting savings into a 401k and and into the stock market and try to buy a home one day and just be that. And I wasn't taking very good care of my health. I worked out a lot, but I was eating like crap and not taking good care of myself. And I didn't value the future at all. And with that, I did a lot of things I regret, and did things to people I thought I was a lot cooler than I was, and I thought I was right about a lot of things that I was definitely wrong about, and aggressive. I don't want to say aggressive, but was very outspoken about things I was 100% sure about, and was not cruel or mean, but just maybe a little acerbic to other people on topics. And I had a pretty big ego, and thought I was just smarter than everyone. And I really, since getting into Bitcoin, since rediscovering my, I don't want to say rediscovering, but really taking my faith seriously as opposed to just kind of going through the motions. Just all of that has changed so significantly in my life. And listen, man, I enjoyed the corporate life. I took advantage of all the outings, all the events, all the, parties, everything. And I just kind of lived it up to the max, if you will. And I have a lot of regrets in looking back at it, but it's also allowed me to put myself in a much better and more grounded place today. And I can look back and appreciate um, the importance of a lot of these values and ethics that matter much more to me now, clearly, than they did in my past life.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon. So your show, right? It goes past money into faith, family, and building something that outlasts you, right? So where did that part of you come from, and when did it fuse with the Bitcoin work?
Yeah, so that's a big part of the show is like you said, building stuff that lasts. And again, I attribute it to just a massive lowering of my time preference. That I didn't really care about leaving a legacy or building stuff that could last, or even family formation. It was like I guess you have kids because that's what people do. It was kind of like, all right, well, I'll get around to that, as opposed to like, oh no, I really want a family. I really want to love my children. I want to stop living for me and start living for someone else, for my next of kin. Um, and on the podcast talking about those things, it really just does come back to having a longer term view of things. And it's hard. It really is hard in the world we live in today to convince people that having a long term view is good. So many people are struggling. So many people are barely able to afford rent, barely able to afford groceries. They're just kind of resigned, like you and I are resigned to never getting Social Security. They feel the same way about buying a house or being able to start a family. And there's a lot of um, despair. But Bitcoin has provided everyone with the opportunity, if you can just start putting a little bit away, and week after week, month after month, whatever you decide to do, that you'll wake up 10, 15, 20 years from now and you will have the ability to get those things. And it's really hard as a young person today to believe that. Like, when I was 25, I mean, the idea of being 35 seems so laughable. And now I'm almost 45, and it's like this time goes so quickly, and you can't even believe how fast it goes. And you'll wake up one day and just say, "Oh my gosh, 15 years were gone just like that." And if you can take today and say, I'm gonna do something for myself 10 years from now, I'm gonna do something for myself 15 years from now, and having that outlook on life, it just completely changes the way you live your life, the way you treat people, the way you eat, the way you drink, the way you exercise, the way you get out in sunlight and enjoy life, and be with your family and all these sorts of things. And on the podcast, I really try to highlight individuals and people that live with that ethos as well. That we're here for the future. We're building something for our kids and our grandkids, and we may never even see what we started today. We may not see the culmination of that or the fruition of that, but we all know that we're working towards something that is in the future, that is more important than just living for today. And I really like to highlight the people doing that. And it's just such an important ethos. Saifedean Ammous, the author of the Bitcoin Standard and many other books, talks about low time preference being sort of the building block for civilization. And I do think that if you can get people to lower their time preferences, to look into the future, you have a more healthy, a more stable, a better, a richer culture and civilization. And I just really think it's so critical to um, you know being in a community, being around your neighbors, being around your countrymen, and and so the importance of that is something I just really like to highlight and try to highlight.
Yeah, no, that's I love that. So I was going to ask you one question. So we should probably close the loop on for anyone new here, right? Which is the surname. You
Yes.
share it with a name. I guess every Bitcoiner knows. How do you handle that? And has it ever opened a door instead of closing one?
Certainly the older Bitcoiners definitely know my last name, but it was actually the first question I got asked the first time I showed up to BitDevs in Chicago, is if I was related to Mark. So for those that don't know, just real quick, Mark Harpless was the guy who basically took the fall for running Mount Gox. He was the CEO at the time of the collapse, and that was the biggest Bitcoin exchange failure at the time. And I don't know to date, if you valued the Bitcoin at today's dollars, it might have been still the biggest one. I'm not sure on that, but I do get asked a lot if that I have any relationship to it. But to Mark, Mark is actually French. My family is actually Austro-Hungarian, and Mark has an accent in his name, and I do not. And so I do not have a relation to him. I would say it hasn't really opened or closed any doors per se. It's just been a fun talking point with a lot of Bitcoiners. So many of whom can actually reminisce and remember all of that at the time. And I remember getting asked at the time, I think it was 2014 or 2013, if I had any relation to the guy, and I don't even know what Bitcoin is. I don't know what an exchange is. So I barely knew what Magic the Gathering was. So, but it is a fun. I do like talking about it. It is a fun little topic of conversation.
So in part one, you made the case for Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So I guess kind of let me push on that a little bit. So like an owner who's watching Bitcoin run from 122K down to I don't even know what we're at right now, 70, 80K or whatever, and says that he cannot make payroll on that, right? So what's the honest answer and not the like the maxi answer? Hey, and Brandon, one more
Sure.
question. Do you have a hard stop in 5? Can you go over today, or
No,
do you
I
have
don't.
a
Yeah, I can go over.
okay, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have an opening after, so let's keep jamming if you're okay.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Um, I um, the answer is every person's situation is different. And what we try to do at Sovereign is sit down with business owners and hear them out. How much do you, because some business owners are just like, yeah, I don't care. I'll max into Bitcoin. I'll just sell some if I need it. I understand the volatility. I understand right now it's going down, but over the long term, it's going to be better off for me. So there's some people like that. And then there's others that are like, listen, I need 3 years of runway to sleep at night, and so that's a different scenario. And I think the sort of general answer is just start with a little bit. Start with 2, 3, 4, 5%. Just get that on your balance sheet. Treat that as long-term savings. Don't be reliant on that Bitcoin to make payroll, to fund a capital project that you know you're going to start. Um, don't use it to have to buy inventory. And so put a position on that you would otherwise be parking as long-term savings. And that number might be 50% for some businesses, and it might be 5% for other businesses. And so whatever you're comfortable with not needing to touch for the next 5 to 10 years, I would say is sort of the general direction. But then within that, obviously would say, let's talk about your comfort with Bitcoin. Let's talk about your how how much pain would you be in if we did have a 50% drawdown? Could you stomach that? Are you okay selling some of your Bitcoin to fund operations? If you suffered a 50% drawdown in Bitcoin, would you not have enough money to fund the business? Like, that's irresponsible. If you put so much money into Bitcoin that a 50% drawdown doesn't allow you to make payroll or pay your vendors, like that's not a good way to run your business. And so I would say just active um, management of that, with the general concept of this is a long-term plan. Start small, put a little bit away, and don't don't be needing that to fund operations.
Wise words. So you guys sell education, you guys sell treasury and custody, if I'm not mistaken, right? So which of these three is the hardest sell, and like what does that tell you about where most business owners actually are in their heads?
Um, I would say probably, you know, just just being able to have a long-term outlook on things. And so I think the hardest part is not necessarily even the how, it's the why. I kind of see all of the technical stuff as similar, like, like learning how to custody or learning how to send and receive. Depends how you do it, but it's kind of like it's this a similar learning curve, but it's really the understanding why. Like, why is it important that I understand Bitcoin? Why is it important that I um, I should be saving this into the future? Why is it important that I understand that this is a long-term asset? Why do I need to understand fiat debasement? Like, what does that mean for my business? That inflation is 8 to 14% a year, and how does that affect my business? And so I would say just the education and the sort of the I guess the why, like I said, why do I need this is the hardest hurdle to get over. And then the technical stuff is it's just hey, we'll book some hours for that. We'll show you how to custody. We'll show you how to send and receive. We'll show you how to buy and sell. Move it within bank accounts, that sort of thing. Like that's all. That's all kind of under the same umbrella. But yeah, just getting business owners to look long term and understand why it's important that they do.
So Brandon, that makes a lot of sense. So on your own show, I saw you had Grant Cardone on
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
right? So he
Yeah.
laid out kind of like borrowing assets against Bitcoin and real estate to buy essentially more of both. You come from distressed assets. So when you hear leverage stacked on top of Bitcoin, does the restructuring guy in you flinch a little bit?
Big time. I remember I was down at yeah, I remember I was down at Strategy for Corporations in May of 2025, and one of the companies that was speaking, they had an individual, I won't say who it was or which company or who the person was up there, and he was bragging about his 65% leverage ratio. And I just looked at one of the other guys that works with me at Sovereign, and I just said, Jeff, this is terrifying. They should not be. This is like a really bad thing because if you have a 35% drawdown, you're going to get liquidated. This is too much leverage. This is, I mean, outrageous. And so I do think there is, for lack of a better term, quote unquote, responsible leverage where you're doing a fiat arbitrage. But I mean, in my opinion, anything more than 20% is like the max I would go. That would be like the max my heart could stomach. And realistically, 10% is probably a more appropriate number to be at to borrow against. But there's a difference though, with Grant, he was talking about something like real estate, where you pair Bitcoin with real estate, and you have a hard asset underneath it that is shouldering most of the load, and then you have this kind of sweetener of Bitcoin. And I think that's a very different value proposition than kind of what these digital asset treasury companies are doing, and then just straight up leverage buying, where you just you just could go 50% leverage and buy more Bitcoin, and then you're part of the cascade bear market liquidation. So I do think there's a little bit of a difference where, say you have like a piece of property, right? It's worth 10 million bucks, and you're going to take an $80,000 $800,000 mortgage out against it. Or no, sorry, 8 million. Jeez Louise, terrible math here. You're going to take an $8 million mortgage against it. And so now you need $2 million for your down payment. So say you could post 4 million of Bitcoin or 6 million of Bitcoin or something like that. Um, and you could guarantee that you like wouldn't get liquidated on your Bitcoin, that you had like liquidation protection. So a lot of it is the terms of the deal. Like if you have a no liquidation clause in there, like your lender's willing to hold till the end of the term, then you know doing that. So you're basically levering your Bitcoin to get equity into the real estate. So that's one thing that can work if the terms are right. And then the other thing is, if you're able to uh oh, sorry, where was I going? Oh, if you're able, yeah, yeah. So the other thing is, if you have a piece of property, say you've owned it for a really, really long time, and you're like at a 40% loan to value. Well, if you want to borrow up like to a 70% loan to value on your property, take the money out and buy Bitcoin. Now you're not leveraging your Bitcoin, you're leveraging your real estate, which is a much more stable asset, which is a much less volatile asset. And I think there's some validity to that, as long as you can service the debt. If you have cash flow where you can actually repay the P&I payments on the new debt that you levered up your real estate to go buy Bitcoin, I think that can work too. But those are really, and again, like, I understand the ethical and moral implications of levering things up and taking on debt. There's a lot of people that are morally opposed to those things, and I get that argument. Like I really do. Like personally, I'm kind of in the same camp. Unfortunately, to buy a home, I do need a mortgage just because homes are insane, and not having a mortgage to buy one is really, really difficult. And especially if you live in a high-priced area. Um, so I get the moral ethical argument, but from a structural standpoint, borrowing against a more stable asset to go buy some Bitcoin and then adding Bitcoin to another type of asset and then over collateralizing it significantly with getting into a loan package where the terms are that you don't that there's a no liquidation clause in there. I think those are kind of the options that can work, but outside of that, yeah, everything is really, really dangerous, scares me, and um, volatility and debt do not mix well. And that's the problem with borrowing against Bitcoin or levering up a company to go buy Bitcoin is that debt requires low volatility. So
Hey, I don't know if I told you, but Sailor started following me maybe I think last year.
interesting.
Any thoughts on I guess all the I don't know noise in the market about it? Seems to be a lot. I mean, he did say he was never going to sell Bitcoin, so I guess
Yeah. Uh,
gotta.
Um, I, yeah, personally, I think Michael made a really big mistake introducing these preferreds. I think introducing preferreds into any capital stack is a horrendous idea always because the
Hot take
preferreds are,
alert! Hot take alert!
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because the preferreds are, well, preferred, and you are basically sacrificing the rest of your capital stack holders to benefit the preferreds. And so I just don't personally like any capital structure with preferred period. And I never did. They were always a disaster, especially in workouts. Oh my gosh, are they a nightmare? But handle I think Michael made a really big mistake. The value proposition of his company was you buy my shares, I have access to capital that you don't. I'm going to do low leverage and we're going to outperform Bitcoin. That was the value proposition. But now, once you introduce these preferreds, if you don't have a business with underlying cash flow, he doesn't have enough operating cash flow to service the preferreds. So what does he have to do? Well, he has two options. One, he can sell Bitcoin. Two, he can sell shares. Either way, you're punishing the shareholders. If you sell Bitcoin, the value of the company drops because he has less Bitcoin and the value of the shares drop. If you issue more stock, you're obviously diluting the shareholders and they suffer that way. So there's no real way to make good on the preferred payments without punishing the shareholders. And so he admitted he came up with this stretch product by putting it into AI, and I just really think he made a mistake. And I think if you got like 10 beers in him and said, "Hey, no one will ever hear this conversation. Did you make a mistake?" I think he would tell you yes. I don't think he'll ever say it to the public. And I think he's now trying to manage the mistake he made, and we'll see how he does it. But, he had a really, really good thing going with the give me your money. I'll go buy more Bitcoin than you could buy. And that was sort of the value proposition that he was offering to the market. And that made sense. But it doesn't make sense anymore because you, as the shareholders, are now the bag holder for the preferreds. And uh, so you have that issue. And by the way, let me just say, like, I respect Michael very much. I've listened probably to more hours of Michael Saylor than maybe any other. No, that's not. He's in the top three of people I've listened to and appreciate. I think he's very smart. I respect what he's doing. He also gave our company a place at his headquarters, and so people from that company have been very generous to us as well. And so I just want to say that I like them and I like the people there, and they have been nothing but good to us. And I think they were genuinely doing something that they believed in, and so I appreciated that. And I just think they kind of lost their way here with this with this stretch product, and I hope they come back. It was funny. Sailor, when all the ETFs and everything came out, a couple of them agreed to help fund open source devs. And when Sailor was asked if he would give money to help fund open source devs, he said no. And his reasoning was there's nothing worse than a developer that feels like they have to do something. He's like, that's how you get mistakes. Certain things are just okay the way they are. And changing things introduces entropy, and it's not always for the best. And the irony of all that was he kind of became the engineer trying to do too much. It just wasn't with software development. It happened to be with finances and with financial engineering. And he kind of fell victim to the very thing he warned others about a few years ago. So I found that kind of ironic, bringing it back full circle as well.
So speaking of AI, you had
What are your
Adam.
thoughts, Sonny? What are your thoughts on it? I'm curious.
I guess it's kind of in the same, like, see, I go to church every Sunday. My wife is a devout
Same here. Yeah,
Christian.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My parents were Hindu, or are Hindu rather. I have friends that are Muslim. So, but if you ask me what am I on that note, I would answer genuinely as confused. I think with the Michael Saylor piece, my answer would be the same, right? And that's kind of
Yeah.
funny because I was the president of a company that was kind of following in wake of Michael Saylor, right? And they still are, but it got a bit wanky, and a lot of I used to be a financial advisor like 20 years ago, and a lot of what I felt in finance was like what turned me away from that world. Bitcoin, kind of like showed me this like new world, right? Where like
Yeah.
it's like code and like money and how beautiful it could all just be. And then I'm obviously fascinated by what Michael Saylor is doing. I still think he's kind of like in many ways the face of Bitcoin, right? So a lot's riding on him. Um, I do think him selling Bitcoin and not completely crashing the market yesterday was probably a good sign as well. But at the same time, I wonder like how much value, not Michael Saylor, but like just the idea of financial engineering brings the world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm kind of like doing my own thing and also focusing more on just Bitcoin, right? Which seems to be the
Yes.
signal. Self-custody, right? That's the signal.
100%.
Um,
Yes.
and so I guess sorry, I kind of lost track there. So you interviewed Adam O'Brien, right? And you guys were talking about running local AI models to stay out from, under like centralized surveillance. So where do you land on AI? Is it a tool for sovereignty, or is it essentially just like one more system that ends up owning us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like everything, right? Like, it's just another tool, and you can let it end up owning you, or you can use it to be sovereign. And another, if people want, on the Becoming Sovereign podcast, I had a great conversation with Matt Hill from Start Nine on this very topic. We talked for a long time about this, and that people were kind of at the fringe of the internet, so we aren't getting really attacked yet. Like, we're basically finding loopholes along the system and then building our own things to interact with it to keep our sovereignty. And I think you can do that with AI as well. And yeah, I mean, all this stuff is it's really just a new tool, right? Like, it's just like the car came around, or gunpowder came around, or the printing press came around. This is kind of just in our time a very big invention that's being introduced, or innovation, whatever you want to call it, that's being introduced to the world. It's like electricity, like the internet, whatever. And it's going to be on us to determine how we want to use it and how we're going to use it. And we can use it sovereignly, we can use it non-sovereignly, we can agree to have our face scanned to get access to it, or we can try to use open source models. And so I would say personally, it's whatever you make of it, and however you want to utilize it, however you want to interact with the system. And I'm sure governments will try to use it to oppress us. I have absolutely no doubt about it that there will be people in the three-letter agencies of our nation and across the world that are trying to make life more miserable for everyone. That is 100% a fact. But it will also be up to you. And the same thing, with your phone. Like, I choose to use an iPhone because of the convenience. I understand I sacrifice a lot not using a Graphene OS, but I've made that choice. I've said, okay, I'm willing to give up some stuff, and I'm not going to be perfectly private. I'm going to be as private as I can. I'm going to turn my location services off. I'm going to run a VPN. I'm going to do everything privately. I'm going to lock down my Bluetooth connections, blah, 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 and do the best I can. But there's some trade-offs I'm clearly making by having Apple know every single app I download and seeing what I'm using and that sort of thing. So it's all just trade-offs and all just personal decisions, and I think it will be used both for good and for evil. And we're just on the side of good. We're just gonna have to keep fighting and try to prevail.
Hey, Brandon, by the way, if you want to pull the plug on today's interview at any time, just give me like a signal or something, right? If you're getting
No,
exhausted, but
no,
I'm
I'm
quite
good.
enjoying it. We also have quite a few people
Yeah,
watching, so I'm just gonna kind of keep rolling.
yeah, keep
But like I
going, man.
said, if if you want to, take a break or something, let me know. Yeah. Hey, okay. So the next question I had was around essentially around Sovereign's whole thesis is that every other form of money leaks energy, and Bitcoin is kind of like the one that does not, right? So what is the strongest argument against that that you have heard, and did it like move you at all?
Against that Bitcoin, like saying that Bitcoin
Yeah,
actually
against that
does leak
core
energy. Yeah,
thesis. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Have you
yeah.
heard anything? And I mean, by the way, I am an electrical engineer, and so I would also like a bit of a double click on like, because I mean, are we talking energy like metaphorically here, like physically, like in a scientific realm? Like, can you kind of break down, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is like something that Michael Saylor popularized to some extent, right? Or am I mistaken there?
No, he's certainly talked about it, and I actually kind of like Jack Mahler's explanation of it, which is that money is abstracted time and energy. So it's the storing of your time and energy in something into the future, and um, I really like that from sort of a a labor perspective, but then there's also like the actual physical energy part as well, right? Like where you have to expend physical energy to bring new Bitcoin into existence, to process transactions, to run a node, to keep the network running. And so you have these almost two different types of definition of energy where there's like physical energy exerted and then you're storing that in money, and then there's actual more as opposed to energy like power generation where you're turning an actual turbine and you're getting power to something to use the network to mine Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin stores that perfectly because you know the monetary protocol, you know the issuance schedule, you know exactly how much is going to be, how much Bitcoin at the end of every day. But obviously within slight variations of block times and that sort of thing. But pretty much you're going to know exactly how much Bitcoin exists at the end of each day, and how much Bitcoin's ever going to exist, and the schedule it's going to be on forever. And so if you what's missing right now, I think what you're talking about is there is a quote unquote like leakage of energy when you when you compare the units of account. So when you're going between like Bitcoin and dollars, you'll have like short term drawdowns where like it's leaking purchasing power, and it's not really leaking energy. It's just that our unit of account, until we switch over our unit of account from dollars to Bitcoin, we're going to unfortunately be in a situation where like the volatility matters, and that because we can't price things in Bitcoin, we're going to have to be subject to the whims of things priced in dollars. And as we adopt this money, as we go through this, as we adopt this new money, as we go through this adoption cycle, long term, you're always going to be good. Your purchasing power is going up forever. You're going to be able to buy more stuff forever. But in the short term, may have this idea like of an energy leakage, right? Where like you're actually losing purchasing power. Like all of us that are holding Bitcoin, we lost half our purchasing power from last October. But I also gained 600% of my purchasing power from from August of, uh, you know, 2019 or whatever it was. So like, I'm you have these periods of time where you lose purchasing power, but over a long enough period of time you gain purchasing power. And also that really is just because we're unable to denominate things in Bitcoin. And the unfortunate part of being beholden to this dollar system is that it's the dollar actually that's unknown, and that's why, excuse me, Bitcoin's price is so volatile. If we were able to switch if we just tomorrow just said we're going to start pricing our grain inputs, our beef inputs, our industrial inputs in Bitcoin, we would, obviously it would be subject to different wars and oil and all these sorts of other things, but we would 100% know what the cost of our money would be, what the prevailing interest rate on the money would be, that would be set by the market. Like, what are people's opportunity costs of their money? But we're just not there yet, and so we have to live through this rocky transition where we're fighting the current of the switchover of the unit of account. Did that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
the time horizon or the high time preference solves this equation, I guess, right? So if your goal
Yeah.
is to liquidate in the next like 6 months, then they're kind of right that Bitcoin does have this leakage. But yeah, if you
Periods
zoom
of time,
out,
right?
if you
Yeah.
zoom out, but I just to kind of push back on that one. So like I said, I used to be a financial advisor, and one of my pet peeves was the index chart. We would always point to it, and we'd be like, "Look, in the last 60 years, the stock market's gone up, and so most likely it'll keep going up, even though you're not technically legally allowed to say that, right?" But that's what you'd insinuate. And so with Bitcoin, do you think we're doing a similar thing? We're like, oh, look, we've got 10 years of data now, and it always goes up over a 5-year period. Yeah, but it's been around for 10 years. Like, do we really like? And again, I'm obviously I've taken the leap on the orange side here, but just curious. These are voices in my head that sometimes creep up.
Well, so I would say a
Yeah,
couple,
how do
a
we
couple,
know? Like, yeah.
I I would say a couple things about that. Like, one, if you actually measure the stock market's performance since 1920 until today and denominate it in gold, it's actually lost money. So you would have been
Hmm.
better off holding a stupid pet rock than you were actually investing in the stock market. So everyone's been bamboozled that the stock market goes up forever. It's actually going down. We're actually becoming poorer by holding our money in the stock market. We just don't realize it. That the debasement of our currency is actually greater than the increase in the production of our companies, and so that's one massive psyop and one huge part of the problem. And the other thing is, if you actually do go back and denominate the stock market or denominate the U.S. dollar in Bitcoin, then it has gone up. And I would say that this is what a lot of the number go up people kind of miss. Like, yes, it is really important that the number goes up, but if you don't understand why the number goes up, like, you're going to get washed out of your Bitcoin position. And it's about understanding Bitcoin from first principles as money. Like, I put together a slideshow that I give to wealth advisors and to financial institutions. And the only thing I focus on is that Bitcoin is money. I spend the first 4 slides explaining why Bitcoin is money. Then, if you can accept the value proposition that Bitcoin is money, then you have to ask yourself, is it the best money? How does it compare to fiat currencies? How does it compare to gold? How does it compare to, we've monetized real estate in this country because people can't put their savings anywhere else in a savings account, so they put it in their house. Um, all these other quote unquote forms of money, is Bitcoin the best money from first principles, aka does it have the best properties of all these other things I named? And the answer is yes. And so because it satisfies the the first principles analysis of the best money, human beings will eventually choose that as the money. It's a foregone conclusion. Now, if something gets compromised along the way that makes it no longer the best money, that, hey, we did a soft fork and everyone in the network agreed to make 42 million Bitcoin. It's like, well, now we have an inflation problem, and it's no longer, you can no longer make the argument that it that we have a known monetary supply because the network changed it. So like something like that could come and interrupt it. But until, and I mean, the odds of that are like, there's not enough decimal points to put before the 0.1% that it is. Um, like until something like that happens, Bitcoin retains the best properties as money, and therefore human beings will choose that as the money eventually. It's just going to take time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Brandon, so you left this like senior seat, right, inside the system that you now essentially tell people to exit. Is there a version of the fiat world that you still defend, or did walking away make you like harder on it than you expected?
I will say that there are a lot of people that I worked with that are really good people. And I would say 95% of them were truly. And most of them, they believed that, like, hey, we're giving this business a line of credit, that we're helping them survive, that they wouldn't be able to buy inventory next season without us, without our institution. And there is some truth to that. Again, as long as we operate with the dollar as our unit of account, there is going to be a need for these institutions to facilitate trade. So like, you know, I hate them. I would like to end the Fed. I would like to end central banking. I would like banking to return to, what it used to be back in kind of the 1800s in the US, and this sort of regional bank formula where you're actually lending out customers' deposits at your bank, and people in the bank know, sort of the scene in It's a Wonderful Life where he's going, and your house over there, Charlie, that's, that's Johnny's business. And like, you actually have a community that's putting deposit in. You're trusting a bank to lend money out because they do it better than you. They understand how to evaluate credit appropriately. And then there's moral hazard. If you screw up, your bank gets liquidated, the shareholders lose the money, you don't get a bailout. And so I think the 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 system as it exists today needs to exist to facilitate global trade. So you kind of have to have it, but the mechanics and the functionality of it are no doubt are purely evil and immoral. But I don't think people are the majority of people aren't showing up to their job as a retail manager at Citibank and saying like, I'm part of the central banking cabal, just doing my part here. And so I I have a lot of empathy for people that are just, it's a job, it puts food on their table, and they really believe that they are helping people. And to some extent, I mean, they are facilitating trade. And let's be honest, even if we went on a Bitcoin standard tomorrow, we probably don't have the financial infrastructure in place to facilitate global trade. Uh, yeah, the network is there. Nation states could settle with oil trades, sure, but and you could have a vendor send a lightning payment, but what are you going to do about escrows? And there's just insurance, and there's just all sorts of things that have to get sorted out along the way, and it's going to require a slower transition. And the system is corrupt, the system is evil, but we also need to transition away from it in a way that doesn't completely collapse everything and just halt global trade as people try to figure out. Now, it's actually an interesting thought experiment. I'd have to think about that more. If we actually just, if the entire fiat system just ended tomorrow, like how would the world react and how would global trade resume? That'd be an interesting thought process or book. Maybe I need to talk with AI about that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so there are some redeeming qualities, and certainly the people there are, for the majority, good-hearted people that believe they're doing the right thing. And so, as much as I hate the system and as evil it is, as it is at its core, your kind of rank and file day-to-day people are just going about their business, trying to help other businesses and other people succeed. You're on mute, Sonny.
Oh, my bad. So I was gonna ask you, so when you're talking to a client and they finally get it, like when the orange pill lands, right? What actually changes for them? Like, is it just the spreadsheet or is it something, underneath it?
It's a realization that there is something else out there, that the system that they've been told they must operate within, or not even told they must operate in, but like that they've been that they've been in their whole life, that now they're saying, oh my goodness, there's this alternative way, there's something. It's it's like a discovery for an individual. It's the first time you read a book that changed your life, or the first time you know you tried to fix something yourself and you actually got it done. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't have to call a plumber, or I didn't have to call the window guy. It's kind of this internal discovery of something that's like, wow, this is really exciting, this is so cool, there is a different way to everything that I've been doing and everything I've been told in my life, that now I'm able to see another path. And so it's almost like a discovery or an invention or something, uh from a thought standpoint for an individual.
It's crazy. I was gonna ask you, so do you think Trump has had a overall positive or negative effect on the Bitcoin movement? Just because I heard Eric speak here in Toronto at the Consensus Conference last year, and they were talking about how they were debanked during the whole, like, whatever, the crazy Biden era.
Hmm.
They're billionaires. They were debanked, and they are now waking up to the fact that the little numbers in your bank account do not signify true ownership, and you are literally living in a simulation or an aquarium of sorts here. And I think but again, Trump also, like, I know my family members included, like, the people cannot handle him. Like, if you don't like Trump, you spend your every minute hating him, essentially, somehow, right? So just curious though, like, what have you seen out in the world there? Like, has it helped you? Because people are like, okay, if billionaires that became the president are worried about our financial system, maybe there's more than meets the eye.
I can unequivocally say he has harmed us, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, like you said, there's just some people that can't handle Trump. Like they associate Bitcoin with him, and they say, "I'm never touching Bitcoin." That's a Trump
Right.
thing.
Right.
Yeah, there's
But
no
but but but
doubt.
what about, but the people that love him, are they now like, oh
We
my
did.
god, like, no, what
We
am I missing?
No, we did have some people that clearly loved Trump, and especially around the election when the price was running up and Trump was
Right.
talking about it, like they came to us. And if I had to wager all my money, I would say they're washed out of their position at this point in time, because it didn't pan out. So that's the other thing too, is that Trump brought a lot of positive press to it at the beginning, but he rugged everyone. He launched a couple of shit coins, him and his
Hmm.
wife. He he basically just got his family extraordinarily wealthy at the expense of other people. He claimed he was going to do all this stuff for the Bitcoin industry, and he's largely been a complete failure. So I will say credit where credit's due. He has taken a lot of the pressure off of like mining companies and Bitcoin businesses in the US. He has made it much easier for companies to operate here in the US. So I will give him credit for that. However, at the same time, he put these samurai devs in jail. I mean, that's just complete. He could pardon them tomorrow. Completely preposterous. Those guys are in jail. I won't get into that whole story, but if anyone wants to dig into that, the way that's been handled in the Southern District of New York, and FinCEN literally told the courts that they were not violating anything, and yet they sit in prison today. And I mean, that is just completely preposterous. You have the Clarity Act, the Genius, all of this stuff is a joke. It's all crypto stuff. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. I mean, the fact that he couldn't just come in, give developer protections, self-custody protections, and all these other things, and he's just messing around with all these crypto people and stable coins, and all. He's spent all of his time addressing crypto issues and not Bitcoin issues. And frankly, it's been laughable, what he's done. And yeah, I think he has tainted the name Bitcoin by associating with it. And unless you're like me or you or other people deep in the Bitcoin space that realize Bitcoin is beyond politics, it has nothing to do with who you voted for. In fact, it takes power away from both sides of the political aisle to start giving power back to individuals and giving us some of our freedom and sovereignty back. That Bitcoin is for everyone across any part of the political spectrum. It's money. It hasn't, it has nothing to do with politics. And by getting associated with that, it has harmed Bitcoin's reputation, just because if you're, like I said, if you're not doing more research, digging into this stuff deeper, you have no idea of what's really going on with Bitcoin, why it's so important, why it's apolitical. You just hear Trump, Bitcoin, and you immediately turn off. Like, you just turn your brain off. Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. No, I've definitely seen that. Do they have a name for that?
I think it's TDS
Derangement
or something
syndrome?
like that.
TDS. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Okay,
But
so
listen, I
yeah.
hang around a bunch of conservative people that had BDS. They had Biden derangements. They lost their minds. It's like,
Yeah.
during all the like crazy trans stuff and the BLM stuff, it's like, oh well, you guys raise your family. Maybe convince your kid it's not a good idea to cut their body parts off. Maybe you teach them that the people running BLM are crazy communist Marxists, and you should avoid those kind of ideas. Like, so there was derangement syndrome, during the other side of it too. I mean, how many people lost their minds about censorship and all this stuff and free speech, and then we turn around and now all of a sudden we're not allowed to say bad things about Israel on college campuses, or you're not allowed to say these other things. So like the shoe just moved from one foot to the other, and it's like all these people that lost their minds about one thing, they just want to bludgeon the other side and punish them and not think it's going to come back on them.
Did you follow the Canadian truckers movement?
Of course, yes.
COVID, or so I still haven't publicized this, but I ended up going to Ottawa, and I took my little kid with me, and we showed up like ground zero and first day. I got like hours and hours of video of it, but I was too chicken shit to even put it online because I was doing like a live stream during that time with my buddy Kyle, who's actually Justin Trudeau's half brother, but they're like,
oh wow,
complete opposite. Yeah. And but it got scary, right? Like these guys came out swinging, and so yeah, it was quite an interesting time, right? To really feel how like what sovereignty really is, right? And like it isn't, and what you think it might be, and reality is like just the bank account thing we were talking about earlier, right? That was, I thought, a very interesting turning point in time, because one of my favorite words is courage, and I felt like I was ready to up and leave Canada around that time, but it was seeing these truckers with their trucks and like just their
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck attitude where when push came to shove, people stood up, right? And so that gave me a lot of hope in humanity, I guess. Um, Again, I could keep going forever. I hope I'm not like I know I'm like I know my normal podcast, by the way, is like 25 minutes. Yeah, so we're at like
Yeah.
an
Oh,
hour and 25. I hope I'm not overstaying my welcome.
no, keep
Uh,
going.
yeah, so I was gonna say since the last time we spoke, what's actually moved at Sovereign? Like new clients, new team, new focus. Like what does a month look like from like where you're sitting right now?
Yeah, so definitely new focus. I mean, we have a nice base and some good customers and people we love, and we're super happy and grateful for them. But kind of what we were finding was that just as a team, we're just not able to get in front of enough people, and w- we need to figure out a way to get in front of more eyeballs. Like the what we thought initially as a business idea, that we were going to be able to go out, convince business owners they need Bitcoin, and then let us show you how to do it, was it just people are, they need 4 or 5, 6 touch points with Bitcoin before they're ready to go. And what really we were finding was, our customers ended up being people on the beginning of their Bitcoin journey, like that had kind of like, okay, I've taken the first step. Now I need help with the second, third, fourth step. And finding those people, that it's just such a small amount of people worldwide. That being said, it's a lot of people. They're just not near us. And so we really needed to figure out the best way to go ahead and try to get in front of those people. And hopefully, Sonny, I know we're going to be starting work with you guys here soon, and that's kind of our goal. And working with you guys is getting us in front of those eyeballs and directing our message too. We were kind of all over the place, kind of just, hey, you on the sales team take this, you on the sales team take that, I'll take this. And it wasn't coordinated. It was very disorganized. It wasn't focused. And we were spending a lot of time and energy, but without the appropriate focus. And that's back to the guy we were talking about earlier, Michael Saylor. One of the things I love that he says is you need to be laser focused. Like that is true. You really need to be honed in on exactly what you want to do. And I would say we were kind of like incandescent bulb focused, just kind of like dimly focused on something. And so we need to hone that and get better with our focus and delivering the exact message we want to deliver to the exact group of people we're trying to get in front of. And I would say that's our focus going forward here.
And you've built, a real bench as well, right? You guys have a CMO, a head of strategy. So what convinced people with options to leave what they're doing and go all in on, Bitcoin consultancy?
I mean, the reality of it is going to sound foo-foo or whatever, but Bitcoin. It's just Bitcoin changes people. One, it gives people the ability to go do something because they probably have some savings built up, certainly as many of us at the company do. And the other thing is, you're so passionate about it that I mean, honestly, in my life, I always say God, family, Bitcoin. Like, the most important thing is God, the next most important thing is my family, and then it's Bitcoin. And it's like, if I'm going to go take my business skills, clearly, God has blessed me with a business mind, and clearly I have had success in that world. And if I'm going to go use my skills and talents to what he wants to do, what better thing could I be working on than Bitcoin? What better thing to bring more hope, to bring financial stability to people, as someone who struggled with seeing sort of the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I always was like, I'm never going to be able to save up for a house. I'm never going to be able to have enough to retire. And what better way to help people out, saying, no, 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 there is a way. It's going to take time. You are going to have to be diligent. You're not going to be able to blow every paycheck on shopping or vacations or cars or stupid stuff. Like, you are going to have to be a little disciplined, and you are going to have to put some money away into the future. But there is this tool to help you live the life you want to live. And Bitcoin has changed so many of us so much that it's like, why would we not want to offer the all the good and great things that have come from Bitcoin in our life? Why would we not try to help someone else get on the path, and not force it on anyone, or not call anyone an idiot for not adopting it, but presenting the option to them, saying like, look at, I've firsthand, my life has improved 10x because of Bitcoin. And, let me try to help. In a lot of ways, it is like Christianity and evangelizing, right? Like, God has made my life a million times better. Let me tell you about him. And with Bitcoin, it's kind of the same thing. It's made my life 1,000 times better. Let me tell you about it. And so, why wouldn't you want to go do that? But the underlying theme of getting people to leave very comfortable, well-paying jobs to come try something new and become entrepreneurs is Bitcoin.
Yeah, the whole geek squad for Bitcoin is a really sharp line, right? So I guess when businesses calls and they're scared, they're afraid they're gonna lose their keys or fumble custody. Like, what are the first kind of 30 days with Sovereign actually look like? Whether it's like a home office or a business that's like engaging with you guys.
Sure. Yeah. So credit to our CMO who came up with the Geek Squad for Bitcoin sort of tagline or idea, premise, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, first thing we'll do is we'll sit down with you. We'll go through, talk to you, usually for a half hour to an hour, just kind of get a general understanding of where you're at with Bitcoin, how much you understand. Do you have a hardware wallet? You just want a better setup? Do you have no clue what you're doing, or your coins on an exchange and that's as far as you got? And then we'll cater a plan, and we'll talk through different options. So if it's an individual, we'll say, hey, do you want to, um, you know, do you want to have a backup, and do you want multiple copies of the backup? Would you feel more comfortable in like a multi-sig setup where you have three keys that sign a transaction, or two keys, and then you can, make backups of those and then distribute them? And so we'll just work with a business. What's your corporate governance structure look like? Who can sign off on things? Do you want to have your CFO to have a key, your CEO to have a key, your COO to have a key? How do you want this to look? And then we'll sit down with them and, excuse me, explain what we think would be best for their company, and advise them on it. And um, just best practices in terms of putting seeds into metal, having multiple copies of it. Your COO should have two copies, and he should keep them in different locations. Your CEO should have two copies of a key, different locations, minimum, et cetera, et cetera. And so just making them feel comfortable around that, and then just having best practices to where you really get the risk down to, effectively zero. If you have three parties, you need two signatures, and each party has multiple backups stored in separate locations. The odds of that structure failing are just, well, don't all go on a plane at once, I guess, without telling someone else where the seed phrases are. But so yeah, it's just building a structure, explaining to them the importance of the seed phrase, why that's really the only thing that matters, and then making multiple copies of it and keeping those copies as safe as possible. So, and then after we get through sort of the custody issue, feeling comfortable with it, we'll get into the other stuff. How technical do you want your setup to be? How much help do you want sending, receiving? Do we want to do some actual business planning with you into the future? Or if you're a family office, do we want to do like inheritance planning? Do we want to talk about trusts? Do we want to do all this sort of other stuff, and go through that whole process as well?
Okay, man. Sorry, I'm just so interested, obviously, in Bitcoin, and lately I've been talking to a lot of AI founders, which I love, but not as much as Bitcoin, right? So that's why I'm taking advantage of this time here. But
Please do.
help me,
Yeah.
help me land this plane. We also have almost like what 85, 90 people watching, so that's always
Oh, very cool.
reassuring
Hello,
and
everyone.
nice
Yeah.
to not be speaking into the wind. So can you play it forward 5 years? Bitcoin adoption for business, like does it end up as every, Tim Draper is on my cap table, right? And he has this thing where he's like telling all of his like companies to hold Bitcoin because he saw with Silvergate Bank, I think it was, or I forget the name of the one, but the one in the Valley, or was it Silicon Valley Bank
Silicon
rather?
Valley.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, where they ended up shitting the bed, for the lack of a better phrase, so can you play it forward? Like, does every CEO like are they holding it in their treasury, or is it something stranger, than a line item? Like, what's the 5 year kind of vision?
Yeah, I would say in 5 years, I've really had to temper my expectations because Bitcoin's one of those things like once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's so obvious. It's like, of course, this is the best money. Why wouldn't you store your time and energy in a better money? Um, but getting people to actually see what they can't unsee is really challenging. And I thought it would be a lot faster. I thought people would get it much more quickly. Like, oh my gosh, inflation's crazy, especially after COVID. I mean, everyone knows inflation's running crazy, yet like no one can figure it out. They think it's like the Iran war, they think it's the Russia war, they think
Yeah,
it's
or
they don't know.
greedy entrepreneurs. That's my
Yeah,
favorite one.
oh yeah, greedy capitalists, of course, corporate profiteers and all this stuff. It's like, man, guys, it's because they're printing money. There's more units of your currency circulating around. So wouldn't you want a currency with less units circulating around?
It's it's quite
And-
brilliant, though. You got to admit,
oh, of course.
like they
Oh,
just
it's the
know
best.
that people are so bad at math and they
Yes.
can't think like second order type of things, and they're never gonna sit down and figure it out. And so genius. It's like
Yeah,
systematic theft.
it is. It's systematic. Well, not only that, you get people to the people that are like, I want free stuff. It's like you'll in the short term get your stupid food stamps or whatever, but it's ultimately making you poorer. You would have been better off saving your money and not having fiat currency to buy more groceries this week and 2 weeks from now. But like you just want the groceries this week, and then your currency will become worth less in 2 weeks. And then you're gonna have to go vote for someone else to give you more currency units, even though you're just making yourself poorer and having to buy cheaper and cheaper stuff because they're never going to give you enough currency units to keep up with the amount they're printing. So it's like the people voting for the welfare, the free stuff, all this stuff, they're actually voting themselves poorer. And like you will never convince those people that that's actually what's happening, but just mathematically, that is exactly what's happening.
And it comes down to the time horizon thing too, right? But it's like the whoever made the machine knew these things, right? They knew there
Brilliant.
was probably going to be like lots of people that, I mean, unfortunately, living hand to mouth, right? They're just like barely alive. And I used to be, like I said, a financial advisor, sat down with thousands of families, and I was alarmed as to like how many people don't have an emergency fund, how many
Ugh,
people are just essentially like, paying one credit card from the other one to the next type of thing, and living paycheck to paycheck. It's scary. And so like for them to like, 'cause there's so many things, right? Like it's just tax and inflation, and no one's ever even taught you about like how to even balance your budget, like what cash flow even means, what net worth means. Like you gotta, there's so much, and then once you get all these things, eventually you land on, well, let's question, like, is inflation absolutely necessary? And it's so far out. Yeah, I get it. Like once you get Bitcoin, you're like, this is so obvious, but the level of like, I think, complexity and thought that it actually takes is I think too much for the average person, because they're just trying to keep them, they're like alive, right? Their head above water. So one owner is listening right now. Let's say he's on the fence. His cash is melting in the bank. What do you want them to do the minute this episode ends?
just reach out to me personally or come to the company's website, sovereign, SOVREIGN.io, and just we have a contact us page We get back to you. I mean, most of the time we get back like the second the email comes in, but within an absolute maximum 24 hours, and we'll help talk through this with you, and we'll help. We can help educate you. We can help. If you're already educated, if you already get it, you're like, okay, I understand. I own a little Bitcoin. Maybe I should get some more. We can go through the technical side of it too. But yeah, just reach out on the website, and that's just the best way to get a hold of us for sure.
Maybe
Or
give
if
them
you,
the website, just because I know Sovereign, it's spelled a little bit different,
yeah.
right? Just so people
So
know.
it's Sovereign without the first E. So it's Sovereign, SOVREIGN. So SOV, like store of value, and then Rain, REIGN.io. So it's kind of a play on words there.
Cool.
But yeah, or like I said, just if that was too much for you or I talk too fast, my Chicago speech patterns kick up sometimes. Just reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I'll take care of you.
Cool. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. Subscribe, like. I've never actually said that before, but yeah, I could use some of that love. Thank you all again. I really, really appreciate it. Brandon, thank you for your time. And we went like way, way over, but
All good, man. I
yeah, I
loved
had a
it.
bit of time on my calendar. You did too. And so yeah, I was feeling the pace that we were going at as well. And I love all your answers. They're so thought out, and not enough people are talking about this. They're just number go up or number go down, and there's so much depth. It's like Bitcoin in my mind is freedom, right?
Yes.
Yes, there's these caveats. It is volatile. It does take a tremendous amount of responsibility, and you have to learn, unfortunately. And but like once you get it, it's miraculous. It makes life worth living. I mean, I say, even before I discovered Bitcoin, Brandon, I didn't even want to have kids either. And so it was only after I learned about Bitcoin I started thinking about, like you said, things like legacy, and thinking more long term, thinking about family and faith and all these other things that are creeping into my life more and more as I get older. So thank you,
Many
Brandon.
such cases. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on would Jesus be a Bitcoiner? I'd
Yeah.
like to think yes.
Well, oh, 100% for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bitcoin fits in everything. Cool. All right, thank you so much, Brandon. I'm gonna bring this one to an end. Just hang back maybe for just a minute.
Yeah.